Alright, so I just wanted to make this video to explain all of the glitches in Day of the Tentacle that we know as of today, May 1st, 2018. So, right now we know of two types of glitches that can be used in about 6 places throughout the game. Each one on their own doesn't save very much time, but you put them all together and you can save like 5 or 6 seconds over the course of a speedrun. The first one is a glitch with how you interact with objects. Normally, when you interact with an object, your cursor disappears and you can't interact with things while you're interacting with that object. You can see my cursor disappearing there. But there are a few items in the game that when you interact with them, your cursor doesn't disappear. And on the frame that you are interacting with them, you can put in another input. And that is a frame perfect trick, but this game runs at 10 frames per second, so it's not a bad frame perfect trick. So you'll notice if I interact with the TV, the cursor is still there while Bernard has his hand up interacting with the TV. So if I put in another input on that frame, Bernard will do that as the cutscene with the TV is happening. See how he sort of slid away there? Now, you can do this to interact with any object in the room, but I find that it's most useful in a speedrun to use it to move out the door. And if you hit the cutscene skip button while you're sliding, you'll go out the door as soon as you hit the hitbox. So this doesn't actually save a lot of time. It only really saves the time that it takes to hit the cutscene skip button after you've interacted with the TV, and the time that it takes to click on the door after you've hit the cutscene skip. So that's like at most 4 frames, 2 to 4 frames. It's not a big time save, but you know, it's something, and it looks cool, is the main thing. Another place where you can use this glitch is actually right out here with the icebox. When you're opening and closing it, you can move while the animation is going on. So that becomes useful when you are putting the hamster in the icebox. So when you use the hamster on the icebox, when the door is opening, you have a few frames that you can put in another input and walk away from the icebox.
I'm sorry to do
So,
this to you.
unfortunately, this time the cutscene does interrupt your movement, but when the cutscene is over, you're a couple steps closer to the stairs, which is where you're trying to go, so it saves a few frames. Once again, it doesn't save a lot of time, but it saves just a little bit of time, and it looks cool. I mean, you interrupt the cutscene you were doing there because you're not standing in the right place. It's kind of cool. I like it. And that's all the ones for this type of glitch. The other type of glitch is... how to explain this? Normally when you're interacting with objects, like say I want to close this mailbox, if you interrupt the action of walking over to close the mailbox, you're just going to end up doing the second action, which is walking over there. But there are a few events, a few actions in the game where having a second action after it won't cancel the first action. It will just delay it until after you do the second action. And so that brings us to Hoagie Warp, which was discovered by A Way of Life. He did an excellent tutorial on how this works and the quirks of it. So I suggest you watch that for a more detailed version of it. But basically, when Hoagie is trying to go through here, he walks over to the right behind the window and then appears in the lobby. Now, as soon as Hoagie crosses the threshold of the door, that automatically queues up the event that he's going into the lobby. So you can actually tell Hoagie to not go there, and he'll still end up in the lobby. As long as you cross that threshold, and then you have to actually like mash click a bunch to get out of that, because he really wants to walk down that hallway behind the window. But as soon as you get to wherever you were trying to go, you will appear back in the lobby. So in a speed run, the fastest way to do it would be to tell Hoagie to go somewhere just outside of the door, so he'll stop there and you won't have to walk over here. And if you do that right, you can save maybe a second, a little more than a second each time, and you have to do that 3 times in a speed run, so it ends up being the biggest time saving glitch in the entire thing. Now, I said that you can do any action for the second action. So it doesn't have to just be walking. You can like, come on, get out of there. I don't have anything I can do actually. But if I had like the bucket of soapy water, you could tell it to do the carriage. But unfortunately, with this glitch in particular, with Hoagie Warp, the action of going into a new room takes priority over whatever second action you tell it to do. So instead of doing that action and immediately going to the next room after that, you will just go into the lobby. Other uses of this glitch, rather, you can queue up multiple actions and it'll just do them in a row. Alright, so the next place you can use this is putting the flyer in the suggestion box. Normally when you do it, you walk over to the suggestion box and it starts this cutscene which you can skip. But you can add another action in between there, and you'll walk over there before the cutscene starts, which you can skip. That wasn't a good example because I skipped it immediately, but you see, if I wait, he'll do the cutscene. And unlike Hoagie Warp, you can actually put any action in between. Like, you can talk to this guy, and he'll do his first line of dialogue before going over there. And then I skip the cutscene, and you go back to the dialogue. Not exactly useful in a speedrun, but it's interesting. You can also do it with, like, putting the wine in the time capsule, or giving George Washington the exploding cigar, or anything. I've actually soft-locked the game once doing this by putting that in there, and then talking to George Washington.
Excuse me.
And then waiting for the screen to scroll back over there. And then cutscene skipping.
Yes.
And then once it didn't actually go back to the dialogue, and I was just stuck there. I haven't been able to recreate it, but I think it's funny. So for a long time, I didn't know how I could actually use this to save time in a speedrun. Because no matter what, you have to skip the cutscene. And the only thing that doing this would actually save is you don't have to actually walk over to the suggestion box. It's not much of a time save. But recently, I realized that if you go to talk to George Washington, he doesn't actually talk to you until the screen finishes scrolling over.
Yes.
It's subtle, but
Gee, I gotta go.
if I just talk to him right here, he
Excuse
immediately starts talking.
Yeah.
So, you can use the time that you would have waited for the screen to be scrolling to skip the cutscene. So, the ideal way to do this is to do it while you're giving George Washington the exploding cigar. What you would do is move over here, use the flyer with the suggestion box, move over here, and then stop right before George Washington. Then skip the cutscene while the screen is still scrolling, and then use the exploding cigar on George Washington at the same time.
Excuse me. Yeah. Can you also provide...
Yeah. So I've timed this, and it's actually a whole second faster than doing it normally. And by normally, I mean like actually walking up to the suggestion box, skipping it, and then walking over here. So it would look something like this.
Excuse you.
And it's pretty dang fast. So here's the next place that you can use this glitch. It's with opening this cabinet. you can open it and then click somewhere, and you'll open it from there. Hoagie's got the force or something. So the optimal way to move through this room is to open the cabinet, pick up the bucket, move over here and pick up the brush, and then leave the room. But the amount of time that this saves is entirely dependent on your reaction time. With the testing that I've done, it's on average 1 frame faster than doing it normally. And the normal way would just be to open this, pick up the brush, pick up the bucket, and go through here. Either way, it's really fast, but I like the glitched way just because it looks cooler. Hoagie does that slide. And the last place you can use this glitch is using the frozen hamster with the microwave as Laverne. So you can use that there, move over here, and it will activate the cutscene, warping Laverne over here. So, this can save about half a second over doing it normally. If you come through here, use that there, and click somewhere on the path that you are already moving. Closer to Laverne, the better. So that's all of the glitches that I know of, and like I said, over the course of a run, it saves about 5 or 6 seconds, which isn't much, but I think the main thing is these glitches look cool. In an adventure game speedrun, there isn't a whole lot to look at. It's mostly just playing the game fast. And this adds a little bit of visual flair to it, makes it more interesting. I don't know.